My name is Kenny Point, and welcome to my farm. It's called Every Herb Bearing Seed. That's from a Bible verse which talks about the food that God gave us for health and also for healing, medicinal purposes. That's the focus of my farm, growing different varieties. And I like to grow unusual things that you don't necessarily find in the grocery store, but it's easy to grow them yourself. So I'll be showing you around today and identifying some of the things that I'm doing here on the farm, which range from the vegetable and fruit production to cultivating mushrooms, and also I take care of bees here as well. Here, this is an example of some of the mushrooms that I grow to sell at market and also to use for my own personal use. These are from blocks, which I order the blocks, and I get the blocks in, and I will usually fruit them inside in the house. And then once they fruited 2 or 3 times, I'll bring them outside, and they'll often fruit again once they're just sitting outside. Like this oyster mushroom, which you can see is fruiting, and even though there's some contamination in there, it's still producing mushrooms. And this has gone from fruiting in the house and being productive there to now coming outside, and it's still, yielding fruit. This is an example again of a oyster mushroom. You can see this was just starting to fruit. The mushrooms are pinning there, but this one has been in the house, and I just brought it out just to show you for this demo. But you can see the mushrooms there, and they'll come out of pretty much all size. They'll be sprouting from that size, and they'll get huge clusters at some point in time. Next to it, this is another block which was in the house. This is a shiitake block. These are shiitake mushrooms, and again, this is one of my favorite edible, but it also has some medicinal uses as well. And back here, this is an interesting one. This isn't an edible mushroom, but it is a great medicinal mushroom. This is reishi, and it's also a beautiful mushroom. You can see the different forms it gets. Sometimes it'll get, antlers, spikes, and other times it'll get the more of a plate-like structure. But it's really hard and woody, so it's something that you couldn't just eat and use in food, but you can grind it and then use the powder to make teas or just put it in capsules and ingest it that way. Okay, this is my log production area, and I do a lot of production on logs because I think you get a much higher quality mushroom than on the sawdust blocks. And you can see here right now I have about 100 logs, and they're inoculated with a variety of different mushrooms, everything from oysters to shiitakes to even some more medicinal types of varieties. And right now this one is fruiting. It has some oyster mushrooms coming, you can see right here, and they'll fruit all along, like you can see different spots where they're popping out. This is a summer variety, that's why these are fruiting. This will grow during warmer temperatures, and this is great because these were all just inoculated like about 3 months ago. For this one to be fruiting already, that's pretty quick. Some of the ones like the shiitakes, I don't expect them to fruit until possibly this fall, but more likely it'll be in the spring. And one of the great things about using the logs to inoculate mushrooms is that you put the effort into inoculating them once, and then once they start fruiting, they'll continue to fruit for years from that one investment of effort, time and effort to get them started. And there are different periods where they're likely to fruit, like mostly the shiitakes, for example, they would have flushes in the spring and then maybe again in the fall. So every year you could get a couple of different flushes. Some people try to force their mushrooms by doing things like soaking them in cold water for a period of time. That can cause them to fruit. I like to just let mine fruit naturally. When they want to fruit, that's when they'll fruit, and that's when I'll harvest them. In the shiitakes especially, they're so much different than what you'll find in the grocery store. I think they're a lot meatier, and I have about 4 or 5 different strains of shiitakes, so they fruit at different temperatures, different times, and that's good for a farm because it gives you production over a wider range of time. And the oysters are another one that they'll fruit in the spring in cooler temperatures, but some varieties like this one are tolerant to more warmer conditions. So by growing more than one variety, more than one strain, it gives you production over a wider period of time. The other thing I want to show you is that there are different ways to inoculate. That's one of the great things about mushrooms. There's just so many different ways to grow them. This is an example. They call these teepees, where you will just cut off pieces of wood and you can just stack them, and then you'll put the spawn in between them, and then you have a couple of logs which you'll have spawn sandwiched in there, and then you put a cap on the top. You'll put it in a paper bag and a plastic bag and seal it up for a few weeks, and then you can take the plastic bag off and just let it sit, and it will inoculate this wood, and eventually it will produce mushrooms from these. Also do straw beds. That's another way you can grow mushrooms, just using straw for certain things like oysters. They grow really well on straw. You can just do them, without sterilizing. Some people will sterilize them, but that's really not necessary. And I do some sterile culture work, and I use a flow hood and a lab space in the house where I can also use that to create my own spawn and use that for transferring that out to logs or straw out in the field. Thanks for joining me today on the tour and allowing me to share some of the things that I'm doing here on Every Herb Bearing Seed Farm and Apiary. I'm looking forward to answering your questions and talking with you again in the future. Thanks a lot.